What's good, people? Welcome to another episode of The Zone. And today we have a massive episode because when you see this will be International Women's Day. So we have a massive lineup, probably the best lineup on The Zone. Don't tell anyone else. But I think it's the best lineup on The Zone so far. And we are here to celebrate International Women's Day. But first things first, let me introduce our guests. We have the one and only, you may have seen her on Sky Sports. You may hear her on the Weekend Sports Breakfast, little plug there. It is the one and only Natalie Sawyer. Natalie, how are you?
I'm very, very well, Tony. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And first things first, thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Next, we have a young and upcoming talent in the TalkSport media. We have Mya Graham. Mya, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not too bad. And last but not least, you may have seen her on the Football Terrace, or you may have seen her getting onto Steve Bruce. It is Kendall. Kendall, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. That second one doesn't sound too good, but yeah, usually I am. That is what I usually do.
Listen, we got to tell the people. And last but not least, I wasn't going to introduce you, James.
You wasn't, and I was very hurt by that. But it is.
Last but not least, we have Mr. James Lewis. James, how are you?
I'm great. Get women's teams in FIFA 22. It's a movement.
Ooh,
Let's put it out there, man. Let's start it. But I brought you guys on here today because I wanted to talk about women in the sports industry and what's it like, because I can't relate because I am a man. So I wanted to ask. So Natalie, I'll go with you. First things first. How did you get into sports? When did you know you wanted to be a sports journalist or a broadcaster or stuff like that? What's your story?
Gosh, well, we're going back a long time for me, unfortunately, because I'm a lot older than everybody here. But I wanted to, I suppose it was as I was picking my A levels and kind of deciding what university I wanted to go to. That was when it kind of all clicked for me that this is what the industry I wanted to be in. Having grown up being a Brentford supporter and going to Brentford games, at Griffin Park every other weekend as such, it was just something I adored. And not only just football, I loved all sorts of sports. So it just seemed like a natural path for me. And so I went to university. After that, I ended up working for a company called TalkSport. Not TalkSport, that's not true at all. Team Talk. Team Talk was the first company I worked for. And just through that company, I got a link to Sky Sports News, and I got a job there, and kind of the rest is history. But yeah, I'd say my journey into it began at sort of like 16, 17 as when I finally thought this is the career I want to have.
Okay. And Mya, what about you?
So a little bit later for me, which isn't actually too long ago because I'm only 22. But I actually when I left school, I went to a performing arts school to do my sixth form there because I love music and I thought that's maybe what I wanted to do. But when I was there, I realised that's not what I wanted to do. But I knew the only thing that I really loved in life was football. So I found a university course which combined football with the additional A-level that I was studying at the time whilst I was at this performing arts school, which was media. So the course was football business media. And I thought, oh my God, this course is literally made for me. So went to UCFB Etihad campus, studied that, still didn't know which part of the media I wanted to go into. So it wasn't until maybe about my second or start of third year when I'd started to do sort of all the modules when I really figured out that broadcast media was what I wanted to do. And then walked out of university and the job at TalkSport became available and now here I am. So it's a pretty short story, but yeah, that's how I'm here.
Welcome to the TalkSport family.
Thank you.
We're in that company. And last but not least, Kendall.
Well, I guess my route's a little bit less traditional than the other girls, because I don't have any qualifications in any sort of football media at all. I went to university, did forensic science, graduated 2 years ago. Ended up becoming a mum, so I couldn't actually go into a full-time career that I wanted to because I wanted to go into crime scene investigation. So at the time, it just wasn't right in my life to do that. And then got offered a job as cabin crew the sort of end of 2019. Did that for 3 months, absolutely loved it. I was like, you know what, maybe this is what I'm meant to do. Maybe I'm not meant to go into anything related to my degree. And then March came around, March 2020, the dreaded month of the change of everyone's lives. And I ended up losing my job 4 months in. So that was like, okay, we're back to square one now. And then that summer just kind of went over. I appeared on Sky Sports a couple of times, just being interviewed about football in general. I've always been interested in football and done like various fan cams in the past, things like that. Nothing major though. Then it got to like September, October time, and I appeared on like a ladies panel for Newcastle United, obviously my club, and just literally bankrolled from there. Now our host obviously took over from Mya, who was the host of the show that I do on the terrace beforehand, took over from her, and yeah, that's all I do now. It's literally like becoming a career for me now, which I never actually really thought that was ever going to happen. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in it. It was just, I just never thought that was an option for me. And now it is.
Kendall.
Pardon, say that again, sorry?
You sort of fell into it then?
Yeah, literally just, so it was just by chance. And honestly, within like 4 months, it's just become something that I pretty much do full time now. So it's amazing. Like that would be my ultimate dream, like completely. But yeah, just amazing.
That's a really nice story. I didn't know that you did forensic science and everything.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, forensic science. Yeah, mad.
So I have so many questions now about forensic science.
We're going to change this to forensic science. Well, another question I wanted to ask, and feel free for anyone to ask it, is as a woman going into the industry or just talking about football as society unfortunately seen as a male-dominated sport, do you feel like you have to do twice as much just to be recognized, or do you have to do twice as much just for people to take you seriously, or do you feel like there's some barriers for women in the sports industry?
Personally, I think yes. I think we do a lot of the time. I think we're always being judged because we're a woman, first of all, and naturally we're being always either told that we don't know about the rules of football, or we're being told to get back in the kitchen. There's all these different things that are thrown at us, and we're constantly being challenged, which I find bizarre in itself. I don't understand why there are certain people that feel so challenged about women wanting to be involved in football. At the end of the day, it's a pastime that we all just enjoy watching. We just now happen to work in it because we want to work in it. And I know through my career and when I first started out, I met challenges in my previous employers where, in terms of just being asked, what do you want to be? I remember one day being on a production team and someone next to me just sort of said, what is it you want to do here? And I said, I don't really know. I just kind of want to try everything and see what there is to do. And his initial response was, so you don't want to be a presenter? And it annoyed me in a way, because I thought, you're judging me because I'm a girl that's come to this industry, not saying, it's great that you want to try out and see what you're good at. The first thing I was judged on was, how can you not want to be a presenter? And I just thought, as much as I did go on to be a presenter, I thought that shouldn't be your first answer. That shouldn't be the first, judgment of me. It should be that, great, you want to work here. You want to see what Sky Sports News, as it is, who I work for, you want to work here and you want to see everything and try everything. But it just sort of felt like it was a conveyor belt. Every girl that comes in is always being judged as someone that wants to be a presenter. And like I say, obviously I was fortunate to then go on to be a presenter, but that wasn't my ultimate aim when I first got there. I just wanted to see what I could do and be good at. And as I say, I was fortunate to go on to be a presenter. But I think, and I'm sure hopefully Mya and Kendall will echo, that we do face challenges. And even now, even in 2021, we still face challenges.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like I'm constantly having to prove myself, like prove my football knowledge, prove that I know what I'm talking about. Whereas if, maybe a male was to strike up a conversation about football, their first question wouldn't be, well, what's the offside rule? So if they don't get challenged on knowing it, why do I? I guess there's a slight bit of, I don't know what the word is. There's a really nice feeling, though, when you do prove yourself and prove that you know what the offside rule is, and much more than just knowing what the offside rule is. But I don't want to be asked that question in the first place. And I think, just like you were saying, Toni, I think that I'm having to do twice as much work. I'm having to prove my point as well as proving my point because I'm a woman. Whereas I feel like a lot of men, you know, they just have to fight their corner and that's it. Whereas there's two battles that we have to fight as women, and it can be draining. It really can. Yeah,
literally just completely echoing obviously both the sentiments there. I just think it's like, what confuses me is the confusion on, like, obviously specifically males, but I mean I get it from females as well sometimes, strangely, but specifically when they are confused, like you actually know what you're talking about, and they're like, oh, so you actually do know football? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Like, I watch the same 90 minutes you do. I know the players you do. I'm not watching something completely different because I'm a woman. Like, it's not like that. I watch the exact same thing, and I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand that just because we're females watching a male game doesn't mean that our understanding of it is any different. I mean, I still get comments now, like on YouTube shows that I do, being like, oh, well, I'm not watching this because insert some sort of insult, talking about football, like women talking about football. I'm like, okay, don't watch that. Like, nobody is forcing you to watch, but then you don't have to then go and insult. Like, it's just absolutely wild. But I've grown up in a football environment all of my life. I don't understand why it's any different for me coming into the industry as a female watching the same thing is for males, for example. But you're absolutely right. It is like you are doing everything twice over because you're a woman and because you want to make everyone understand that you know football as well. It's just crazy.
I wanted to ask, do you think in a sense of, even before when women's football was held back for like 50 years, do you think there is a sense of gatekeeping now? And then the fact that times are changing, people are having a hard time trying to, I guess, give it up in a sense? Because when I look at social media, it seems like there's a lot of people that just don't want women to be involved in football without a natural reason. It's just a case of, well, I'm used to seeing the same faces on the screen, so I want to keep seeing these faces instead of giving everyone else a fair chance.
I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of archaic people out there that just like tradition and don't realize that the world evolves. Everybody evolves. You know, us as people, we evolve and our opinions change. And it just, honestly, I find it staggering that we're still talking about the fact that there are there are people out there that are critical of women wanting to be involved in an industry that ultimately is just about bringing joy to everybody. Now, don't get me wrong. I know we have bad results for our respective teams and we will talk about them, I'm sure. But, you know, ultimately it's football at the end of it. It's just football. It is just a game. So why anyone is threatened by us being involved, I just don't understand it at all. But I just think it comes down to a lot of what people deem as tradition, and it's traditional that men discuss football and women go in the kitchen and get the beers for the blokes that are watching all the games, etc., etc. But times are changing and people just need to wisen up.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I would agree to an extent, because I think as much as we think that sort of traditional generation will sort of die out, it is generational, and these ideologies are taught to people's children. And then, you know, if you see your dad and he's against women in football and you think, you know, sunshine's out of his arse and everything that he says is correct, then you're going to continue that ideology. And it's a shame, because it will die out for a lot of people, and a lot of people will start to evolve and realize it's a bit like racism, that, you know, women should be accepted in football. There will always be that small group of people where it's been taught to them and they just think that you know, that's the way it should be. So I do agree with Natalie. It is, you know, times are changing and a lot of people are changing their opinions on women towards football, but there's always going to be one or two people that just can't get on board.
Yeah, I do think it is. I completely agree in the sense that it's like people don't like change for some reason. This country is very known for not liking things to change in, you know, a drastic sense. So obviously Alex Scott was announced as, you know, one of the new pundits and things like that on Sky and on BBC and as a host. Everyone's like, well, what's going to happen to, you know, Phil Thompson, or what's going to happen to Charlie Nicholas? Like, they're not going anywhere. Like they were just adding to the team. Like obviously a few people left, a few of the guys left who had been there quite a while, but everything's got to change to fit with the times. You can't just keep something because it's convenient, if that makes sense. You've got to bring new knowledge on. You've got to bring creative, fresh ideas. And it wasn't because, you know, people are always like, oh, they're just trying to fit the diversity quota. But why? Why is that? Why does that have to be the reason why a woman is invited to speak about sports? Because it's not to fill a diversity quota or, you know, to sort of battle sexism. It's nothing to do with that. It's because she's very knowledgeable. She's very successful in her footballing career as well. She's won a lot of things and she's competed in a lot of really high level games in football. So that for me is like, people just think that she was there to, I mean, I'm using her as an example because she's kind of one of the freshest examples that I can think of. It's probably been going on for a long time before this. But because, you know, it was a whole diversity thing, but it's not at all. As I say, she's very, very knowledgeable in her field and she's a great pundit, in my opinion. She's very, I feel warm. Like when I watch her, I feel like I like her and, you know, things like that. So, yeah, I just think it's crazy that that there has to be a reason why a woman's like is chosen to do a job. It can't just be because she's good at what she does.
Looking at the more positive side of it now, would you say there were any women in particular that were role models for you to get into the industry? So, like, for instance, Natalie, I don't want to make you feel old, but I grew up watching Natalie on TV. I'm not trying that. No, but I grew up watching Natalie on TV. So would you say, and even Natalie for you, were there any women role models in the industry where you thought like, oh gosh, I want to be like her, I want to do the same thing that she was doing when I was older?
I mean, goodness, there are loads, obviously, but I mean, if I was to pick out one in particular, I would say Claire Tomlinson, who obviously still works for Sky Sports News, but she was, and obviously we're going back a while now again, but she was the touchline reporter for Sky Sports. She was probably one of the first female touchline reporters, and she is a good friend of mine now, but I obviously didn't know her back then as well. Sorry, and what she had to go through on a weekly basis, kind of what we've already talked about, and I know we want to talk more positively, but I mean, she went through very tough times, but she came through it, and she's still, in my eyes, one of the best presenters. She has an eye for a story. She knows. I mean, she's a bit grammar police. She'll be hot on the old grammar, and often will pick me up on stuff. But you know, that's just who she is. She is just a wonderful expert when it comes to everything, and so she's always been someone I've looked up to. And when I first started at Sky Sports News, I was quite intimidated by her because I remember thinking she's amazing, and you know. And she's just lovely, and I shouldn't have been intimidated by her. But at the time, we didn't really mix in terms of girls never presented with girls on Sky Sports News. You're always with a man. So I didn't really know her well until the later years of my time at Sky Sports News. But as I say, now she's a really good friend. But yeah, she'd be someone I definitely looked up to just because of everything she's done in her career. She's also worked behind the scenes in terms of press at different football clubs and at the FA. So she's done a load of different things in the football industry. And I just think she is someone that should be heralded a lot more than probably she is.
Anyone else? Role
models? I'll go. I don't know what, like, definitely a role model, but someone maybe that I just idolized for me was Sue Barker. So I love the concept of being a woman in sport, dominating, presenting with loads of men, toxic masculinity surrounding you, and her doing her job so well. And I grew up watching her thinking, not necessarily I want to do that particular job, because I still don't know personally whether I do want to present, but I want to be a boss woman in sport like I watched her and saw that she was. So I would say definitely she shaped, growing up, the fact that I maybe looked at her and thought, no, I actually can be a woman in sport and be accepted and be dominant and boss it, because there wasn't a lot of women growing up when I was growing up doing that on television. I feel like maybe in the last 5-10 years we started to see it, but when I was a little girl, 15 years ago, there wasn't that many on television, but she was one every week without fail that, yeah, I'd love watching.
Yeah, for me, I think it was similar in terms of obviously seeing women like Natalie on Sky Sports, because I always used to say that was my dream job, Sky Sports News. Like, anyone who's known me from being probably 5 years old, like, if I ever thought I could have a dream job, that was it. But I just never ever went into that career path because my life just didn't go out that way. So obviously, like, I used to watch like Gabby Logan, for example, in particular, because she's also a Newcastle United fan. So that was like something that always stuck with me, and I always watched her do sports things. Obviously, other presenters like Kate Abdo, for example, in more recent years, who I really, really liked. Just not particular role models, just seeing women in general in the field is like amazing to me. Like, it was just something, because even growing up, like at school, I was the only girl in my friendship group, probably in my year, who could handle a football conversation. And everyone used to always be like, used to call me a tomboy. Like, even though I wasn't a tomboy at all, I always used to get called a tomboy because like I liked football. But I'm like, I'm not a tomboy, I just like football. It doesn't mean I'm a tomboy. But yeah, just seeing it, like as Mya said, just seeing women in that space was just amazing for me growing up. And it was few and far between, but now we're getting to a point where it is more accepted, and obviously it is more welcomed in a sense. So that's even better to see now. And I've met so many people in the last 6 months who are smashing it, in the more age of social media, I guess, not, like typical presenting. It's more like social media, presenting YouTube and things like that, who are amazing. Like, they're so good. And I just really never thought that I would probably see that for a long time. So it's really, really good to see.
Do you think more can be done to show more women in sport? Because sometimes you feel like it's either Karen Carney or it's either Alex Scott. Do you think more can be done in general just to show a lot more? Because I think representation matters, and if you can't see it, then younger women won't feel like it's possible for them to do.
What, so you mean as presenters or pundits, do you mean?
Just in general, even camera women, stuff like that, just in general, if you can see it, sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of women who are at a certain age of their life now that, in a way, they may think that the media side is beyond them now because they've got a different career, and because ultimately at the stage of their life when they were deciding what they wanted to go into, they would have seen sport industry as a male-dominated industry. It's not a welcoming industry, which I must say, as much as I know I mentioned an episode I experienced at Sky Sports News, in general, it's I've been quite fortunate. I've always found it to be a very welcoming place. And yes, you get judged, but you get judged more, I think, by the fans or by the viewer or by the listener than you do necessarily with your peers and those that you work with. But of course, if can make the sport industry something that people can look at and think, oh, this is so accessible, I can easily go into that industry, then it can only be for the better. Because ultimately, diversity of any kind is so essential, because you need different voices, you need different opinions. So, why we would want to limit who can join into our little clique, I don't understand it, So yeah, I'd be definitely hopeful that times, which we've mentioned already, are changing, that we will see a more opening, if you like, to this industry, that people will just, not necessarily because it's not welcoming already, but because people will realize actually it is welcoming, and they're happy to have us join in, if you like.
Yeah, I don't think it as well, like, we know it's not going to go from 0 to 100. Like, there's not going to be 1 minute no females role models being represented more in the media to all of a sudden there's loads, because then you do have to start asking the question, are people just ticking boxes? Like, so I personally understand, and I know that I'm not going to turn on the TV next week and there's suddenly going to be like a whole panel of women, of pundits. It's not going to happen like that. So I think as long as women can accept that, it's going to be staggered, and we can accept that, I'm more than happy with that, because I would rather me earn my position than there be loads of women in, say, a company that I'm working in just to tick boxes. I want us to be there because we actually are wanted there. So yeah, I do feel like, and as well, we were talking about representation, it's needed, because like I said, when I was younger, I was trying to sort of figure out who my female role models were in football and in the media, etc., and there weren't too many to pick from. So you start to doubt whether that is what you can actually do. So as we do sort of time evolves and we go on, the more women who are represented for younger females, the better, because more young girls are going to start to think that they can actually do it. And that essentially will mean that more women are, I feel sometimes that maybe there's less women in sport because less women want to get involved in sport in the first place. So there's a smaller pool to choose from. Whereas if the representation is there, then hopefully that pool of choice will grow for women. So yeah, representation is key.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what I dislike about it most is the fact that, you know, you see women, just general news presenters on, you know, at dinner time and whatever, and you see people, and that's never questioned. You never question a women news reporter, like a general news reporter. The same as when I remember when I can't remember what she's called now, Emma something, the Chelsea ladies manager, when it was you know, sort of questioned around the fact she might be, was it Wimbledon manager or something, it was like, oh no, this can't happen, and there was such an uproar. Yet when Phil Neville went to manage the ladies team, that was all right. That's okay. Like, you know, so representation in the sport matters hugely, because it doesn't have to be uproar every single time a woman's, you know, going to be a lineswoman or lines person, however you want to say it, or, you know, an official or a manager. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. So the representation, the more representation that you get is so important. Obviously, we have some, and that's great. But as I say, there's just an uproar every single time a woman's close to a really high level football and job. So like as a pundit or a presenter or a manager, or, you know, obviously the Shan, the lady who does the Lions women and the official and stuff, she still gets hate now, like, and she's been in the job a while. So it's just crazy to me that it's just constantly uproar. So the representation does matter, definitely, in terms of it shouldn't have to be like an anomaly to have a woman involved in that area. It should obviously just be, you know, commonplace, maybe less so than male, but definitely just something that people just don't really entertain, if that makes sense.
If there was any advice to give for women trying to break into the industry or into the social media space or the YouTube space, what advice would you give them?
What would I give? It's difficult because, well, I can't speak obviously from a social media angle, but from my own aspect, I think, one, you want to work in this industry because you love it. Don't work in it because you see it as an opportunity to become famous, for example. I think it's really important to love what you do, and I can't imagine working in a job that I don't want to get up to go to every day. So I'm very lucky and very fortunate. And as you know, Toni, we set our alarm clocks at ridiculous hours to get up at the weekend.
So I'll think about that about tomorrow morning. But yeah,
I know, but we do it because essentially we enjoy what we do. We love our jobs, and I think that really, for me, is one of the key things for anybody wanting to get into this industry. Do it because you love it. And then in terms of TV and radio, I hate to say it in a way, but there is quite a big part of it that is down to who you know, and making contacts, and just keep messaging that person. If it's on email, whatever it is, keep emailing, just keep pestering, because the door will eventually open for you. It is just that you have to keep doing it, and it can be a bind at times, and you can think, oh, is this really going to lead anywhere? But eventually it does. But I know, and it's hard sometimes to find those contact details, but there are contact details out there, and it is possible to find out who the right people are to get in touch with. So my advice would be, find those details out and pester, and it will pay off, because that's what happened with me. I did that at Sky Sports News. I just kept pestering the boss until he eventually was like, come on down and let's talk about stuff, and eventually led to a job. So, I'd like to think that's partly what can still happen these days. I'm not sure. That's how it worked for me, is what I'm trying to basically say.
Kind of off the back of what Natalie said, I think you can't be afraid to work for free. Now, don't take that in its entirety, because, you know, you shouldn't be taking the mick out of. But in this industry, experience is so vital, and it shouldn't be this way. But like we were saying before, as a woman, you do have to sort of double prove yourself. So if you do have that experience behind you, it'll look great. And, you know, you don't always get paid for that experience. Sometimes I know I can speak on behalf of Kendall as well, you're appearing on 2, 3 maybe a night, different podcasts and live streams on YouTube, doing one from 5 till 6, then 6 till 7, and you're doing it all for free. And you're doing it because you love it, like Natalie said, but also because sometimes that's what you have to do to build up that experience. And I've made some incredible contacts through doing a lot of YouTube shows that I've done for free. So it all does pay off in the end. So, and essentially, like Natalie said, if you're doing it and you love it, you don't feel like it's work. So as much as you are doing it for free, it's just a bit of fun. Like, I don't know if Kendall will feel the same, but I absolutely look forward to a live stream or a podcast. It doesn't feel like I'm working, because I'm just talking about football. So yeah, don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, I think that's why, obviously, when you don't get paid for certain things, you're doing it free. It's because you like it. You're not really too bothered at the time, because it's just something that you kind of delve into and enjoy. But I'm going to give advice kind of on a different sense, because I've experienced a lot of it myself, and it's more about trolling and, you know, the negative comments that you get. Because as much as it's so, and I am guilty of it in the past, don't get me wrong, I entertain, you know, Twitter trolls and sit and argue with them. Anyone who follows me on Twitter will see that. I argue with them because I just think, like, at one point I want to be like, no, like, you're not getting to me. Like, I want to call you out. Like, I want people to see what kind of person you are. But then I was speaking to someone from another Newcastle fans channel, and he said, but Kendall, they're basically adverts. Like, you are giving them an advert for their stupidity. Like, you're giving them clout that they don't really deserve or need. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, now I actually see it. Maybe I shouldn't sit and argue with them. But as much as it is just, it's so hard to do. And as I said, I've been guilty of it in the past, but just ignore it, especially if it's on social media. Block and move on. Please don't interact with it, because you can then show yourself in a bad light. If you're getting angry, we're all guilty of, you know, maybe swinging insults if we're angry, or saying things we don't mean in anger. And it can cast you in a bad light, especially if you want to go further in the social media world, or even the presenting world in general, you know, the football world in general. And you don't want, we know now that we live in an age where old tweets are brought up constantly. Like, if someone's doing well, for some reason, people just like to bring others down, and they just want to see them fail. So, you know, if you're engaged in a Twitter argument and you say something that you haven't meant, but it's just back at someone who's hurt you, that can cast badly on you in, you know, months, years to come. So just please don't do that. Don't engage. It tells them more about themselves than you. Don't ever, like, always just believe in yourself and know that you're doing this because people want you to do this, you know, especially from my perspective, appearing on YouTube shows, because people wouldn't ask me if I was rubbish. Like, do you know what I mean? People wouldn't ask me if I didn't know what I was talking about, because it looks bad on them. Like, why would you get somebody on your show who really doesn't have a clue, or isn't bothered, or isn't a positive person? You wouldn't do that. So you've just got to believe in yourself and know that you're doing this because you want to, because you want to succeed, because you love it, and because you're good at it. That's basically, you know, what you've got to believe in yourself, and ignore all the negativity, because again, it's another thing of people don't like to see people do well, and they'll try and bring you down at any opportunity. But it's not a reflection of you at all. It's a reflection of them and, you know, their poor negative mindsets, really.
James, you got one more, and then we'll wrap up.
How do all three of you deal with positives and negatives, even in your careers and things like that?
I mean, positives, I'm shouting from the rooftops. No. Oh gosh, you know what it is? I mean, it's a bit like Kendall was saying there about the social media aspect of stuff. You can get, I don't know, let's say you get 10 tweets, and you might get 9 tweets that are all lovely and glowing and happy, but you'll get that one tweet that just stays in your mind, and it will just live long in the memory. And it's hard. It is hard. But Kendall's absolutely right. You shouldn't interact. And I myself have been guilty of doing that. and you should block or you should mute or whatever it is you need to do to just make sure you don't see it. But it is hard because you do think, why are you judging me on, well, you're judging me and you don't even know me. That's what I find staggering. And some of the stuff you get as well can be so damning or can be so horrid. I mean, I've been wished death and stuff like that. And you just think, you're not thinking about people that might see that, either my family and friends who might just happen to see that. And for that, as much as I can say I'm tough and I can, not worry about it, I've had my mum occasionally mention, I've seen something, I didn't really like it. But people don't think about that because, and I'm going off on a tangent because this is like the social media aspect and in general that is a big conversation at the moment. But it is hard to deal with negative stuff like it is for anybody. The only difference is that people feel that they can message us because we are in a position where we're doing these podcasts or we're doing our work and we're putting ourselves out there. But you sort of think, well, hang on, these people that are messaging us, what do they do for a job? Please let me know so I can then come and criticize you, because see how it feels. Not that I'm going to do it, but you know what I mean? They don't understand that just because we're in the public eye does not mean we're an easy target and should be a target. And I'm all for fair discussion, but there's a line. You don't cross that line, and we should be fairer because it does hurt. Negative stuff can hurt you and it can live with you for a long time. Positive side, obviously it's great. And, again, I'll interact with people that are positive as well. I'm not just going to always go with the ones that are negative because I want to start a fight or defend myself. But yeah, I do genuinely think it's more the negative ones that always just sit there. You just feel it in your gut for quite a while, sadly.
Yeah, I agree. I actually did in my university dissertation. It was the sort of the adverse effects that Twitter has on professional footballers' mental health. And it was quite common through all the footballers that I interviewed that psychologically those tweets, as much as the negative ones, as much as they don't interact with them, they stick with them, and they are thinking about them when they step out on that pitch. So, yeah. But for me, I guess I sort of try to take negatives and positives both in the same way, and that's just use them as building blocks. So the negatives, sometimes, do you know what, I can take constructive criticism and use, that kind of negative as a building block. And then even stupid negatives, I also try and use it as a building block. So say I get a sexist comment. One that creeps up, I don't know whether you women find it as well, is that people think that this is a compliment. You're only sort of asked to come on YouTube shows, or you've only got this job or whatever because you're, a fairly attractive woman in the sport. People like to look at you and they think they're complimenting you when they say this, and it's not. So what I then like to do with those types of comments is go out and actually prove that I'm not just doing this because, you might think that I look good on a screen. So yeah, I definitely use those as building blocks. And then also the positives as well. If someone says, you did a really good job tonight at hosting a show, like Kendall was saying, I used to host on the Football Terrace, and I did sort of one gig and people got back to me and said, we really liked it. I then went and got my own show doing it, and I used that as a building block. And the positives that people told me from that, I just kept trying to grow. And I think you can only use all comments as a building block because you will get so far listening to the things that people think you're good at, as well as the things that people think you're not good at. So yeah, it's a lot easier to listen to and to work with the positives than the negatives. But if you can, build up a thick skin enough to deal with the negatives as well, then you're really onto a winner, because yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, as Natalie was saying, like the personal insults that come, like I've even had, so my daughter's mixed race, I've even had like racial abuse aimed towards my daughter before, and for a long time after that I was so scared to post anything towards my daughter because I thought, she's she's 3 years old. Like and I mean, at the time she was 2 years old, and I was like, she's an innocent little baby at this point. Like, why are you directing that at me? Because obviously they knew that was going to hurt me the most, and it did. And that still literally sticks in my mind now. I always think about whenever I post my daughter minimally. I'll post about her a lot, but I'll never post like pictures of her or anything because I always worry that that's going to happen again. It's like, honestly, it's like traumatic. Like, I just think, oh God, but it's so easy to just have that sit with you, and as I said, it does sit with me still now, but it's best to just block and ignore. And as I say, you know, the negatives come quite a lot with being a woman in this industry, and unfortunately it's probably going to continue for a long time. But when you get the positives, and I must admit, since I started doing this obviously 5-6 months ago, the positives have far outweighed the negatives, and it's really nice to when people are positive and they like what you do, and you know, they enjoy you, and you get like personal compliments, like they like your personality or any just things like that. It's a very humbling experience because, you know, in the social media world, getting followers and likes and views and stuff is so at the forefront of people's minds, and that's fine because that's, you know, that's where the money comes in, that's where you make a name for yourself, that's where you gain. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just a normal person, and it's mad to me that I get even messages now off some, you know, younger girls who are trying to get into the YouTube footballing world specifically, and they'll say like, "Oh, you're my role model. Like, I watch your shows and I really love what you do." And I'm like, "Me? Like, no, like, don't be silly." Like, because I am just a normal person, like, just genuinely. But obviously this industry puts you in contact with so many amazing people, and people watch you, and that's why I love doing this. Because I mean, even just for my daughter as an example, she's 3, and the world she's going to grow up into is going to be a lot more diverse and a lot more accepting, and that's totally amazing. And if I can be a part of that and a part of that movement to, you know, allow her to say, oh, you know, like, my mum got involved in things when things weren't as easy as they are maybe in, you know, in 20 years for her, and I would just love to be a part of that. So that's when the positives come in, and I think I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing despite all of the negativity that comes around, because that the positives and the love that we all get in this industry is far outweighs any negativity, and just goes to show, you know, it can go towards making a big change in this industry, and that's what I focus on, and that's why the positives are so important to me.
Those are really good points you all made there. But now we are going to wrap up. First of all, thank you every single one of you for coming on, because it's really eye-opening to see.
I got one last question. I got one last question.
Oh, careful.
What is everyone's Nandos order?
This is not a serious comment. No, Jay, that's...
It was just on my mind. I had to say it.
You want me to seriously answer it, though?
Yes, this is a serious question.
All right, then. I'm so boring. I'm standard, go for the same every time.
Me too.
Which is a chicken pitta with hot. Obviously, I go hot. I also have pineapple in there. I know it's a bit extreme, but I do like a bit of pineapple. Maybe that's kind of, it's just, you know, maybe it helps with the hot, you know. Then I might alter between the mash and chips, and I always have a bit of halloumi on the side. Yeah, I quite like it.
Love it. I like that order, Natalie. I like it.
Thanks, Kendall. What's yours then, Kendall?
So mine is a chicken wrap. I normally go medium because then I'll put hot sauce on the side. That's what I usually do, because if it gets too hot sometimes, I'm like, oh, then it makes my mouth burn. I don't enjoy the rest of the wrap, so that's what I have to do. Like, do it like that, and then I'll get halloumi on the side of my wrap, not inside, because I just like the halloumi by itself. Spicy rice and macho peas is usually what I get. That's pretty much every time.
I actually don't eat Nandos that often, you know. I overdid Nandos when I was about 15, 16. I'm talking, I went every weekend with my little bit of...
Before, like, clubs were a thing, before you were allowed to go club at 18, Nandos was like the go-to spot. Like, that's where you got dressed up. Like, I honestly can remember going to Nandos in heels when I was like 16.
See, this is how old I am. I mean, Nando's wasn't around when I was 16. We would go McDonald's. So, you know, you guys are living life.
I overdid Nando's when I was younger, so I don't eat it as much now. But if I were to, it'd be a wrap, peri tamer, halloumi, peri chips, maybe garlic bread, maybe not. I feel like that is a lot of carbohydrates though. So
yeah, that's why I always go for the peas, because it is a lot of carbs.
Yeah.
A lot of people do like mash and chips. I'm like, why?
yeah,
Why are you doing that?
Question shit. You know what? Go on, James. You might as well put your order in.
You have to put yours now, because it's your
yeah.
We
fault.
get the Nandos. I love this, James. So kind of you to order it for us.
You know what?
Just a nice person, just a nice person. It's just the zone surface. That's what we do at the zone. We look after people. But yeah, I get 4 chicken thighs, 5 wings, coleslaw and rice. Yeah, that's me.
What and what heat
That's
we
gonna sound
talking?
really boring.
It depends if I'm with family. If I'm with family, they pressure me into a lot extra hot. But if I'm by myself, or like if I'm with people that will accept me, then I'll get a nice medium.
Tony, you can't escape this, surely.
No, mine's quite boring, to be fair. I get a chicken burger, like double chicken burger or whatever. Then I'll just get chips and garlic bread. That's it. Nothing too major. It's just pretty boring.
What spice we getting? What spice you getting?
You know what? I used to get hot, but it just because hot doesn't taste nice. Like, you know, listen, I'm African.
Yeah, that's
so
what I mean. That's
that
get on the
has no
side.
effect
That's what I
on me.
mean.
So I just get medium now. I just get
Mm.
medium. Like, medium tastes nice, and if I really want more spice, then hot, extra hot, or whatever. But
Do you mix all the drinks together, or do you keep
No,
it
that's-
humble?
No, that's
we're not 14, James.
It's probably just me then. Fair enough.
definitely just you.
I used to do that. Like,
I used to love it when you used to be able to just get the water. Like, you used to
Yeah.
ask for water, and then you just used to go and like fill it up with the
Yeah,
coke.
you
But
just
now I'm
detour.
old, and I'm like, now I'm old. I'm like, I don't dare do that in case I get kicked out of that door.
exactly, we're not 14 anymore. But, we're going to wrap it up there. First of all, I want to say a massive thank you to Natalie, Mya, and Kendall. Thank you so much for coming on. What we do at the end of anything we do on the zone, we let our guests shout out what they have going on, if they want to plug anything. So, Natalie, I'll start with you. Is there anything you want to plug? You know, a little S&P.
Well, I mean, I don't have much going on in my life really, other than game breakfast or weekend sports breakfast, Saturday and Sunday, 6 till 9 a.m. on TalkSport with Toni. So it's great.
There you go. Half 7 Football Master, if you guys care. But anyway, I'm Mya. Go on.
God, nothing too exciting. What? My life's pretty boring at the minute. I'm about to go back to TalkSport next week. So yeah, but I there's nothing to plug. Nothing.
No socials.
You got your Twitter right there.
Yeah, Mya Graham on Twitter, but it's mostly
Nice.
just Spurs slander. So if you don't want to see that, don't follow me.
Yeah, I think that's why people probably avoid following me, because mine, again, is just Newcastle United slander every single day. Because there's always something to slander about. But no, yeah, just Kendall Rowan on YouTube and socials as well, which is where you'll find most of the stuff that I do. Obviously, after this at 9 p.m, I host my show over on the Football Terrace. So you'll see me there. And obviously, there and in between, because I do a couple of shows on there now. And also, any Newcastle fan channel, I'm normally on there because people like a Steve Bruce fan. And that is, you know, currently where I'm at. So that's probably where you'll find me there.
Brilliant. And last but not least, yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been another episode of the Zone Podcast, special edition for International Women's Day. I hope everyone has a good International Women's Day and you celebrate it, and you celebrate all the women, all the good women in your life. And yeah, you can follow us on. You can see the banner there. I don't have to say it anymore. At the Zone LDN, the Zone LDN _. And yeah, thank you for watching.